There was another interesting one. Was a student who had gone to art school and had said he hadn't actually had any transformative experiences in art school. But after he'd graduated, and he was someone who came to my lab once in a while, he said he never liked Rothko, just never liked Rothko's paintings. But he was going out to LA to meet his girlfriend, and she was meeting him there, and she was going to pick him up at the airport. But she said this was a Friday, and she had to finish her essay for her art class, or art criticism class, I suppose. So she picked him up at the airport, but they went to LACMA, the LA County Museum of Art, and they went to the Rothko room, and she sat in front of a Rothko and wrote her essay, and he just sat there with nothing to do. And he says it was really funny, but after about 20 minutes, he realized that he liked this Rothko painting that he'd been looking at without any particularly paying attention. And then as he realized that he liked this painting, he realized that he liked all the Rothkos in the room. And he says he's liked all Rothkos ever since. And so there was something that seemed that, at least with certain painters, that it just takes a certain amount of time or exposure to actually be able to like it. One thing I'm very interested in is showing the role of beauty in decisions. Because I think there are lots of decisions that require the integrative capacity of beauty and couldn't be made without them. So I don't mean how beautiful a person is. That's obviously an important example, but I think that most of us in most of our professional decisions, or not just professional, important decisions, this would apply to child rearing, essentially. Anytime you want to make an important decision that, for example, if you're just trying to maximize something that can be measured by a number, and you have 3 or 4 ways of doing it, then you can simply calculate which is going to optimize, I don't know, your income or something. But most of the decisions we make actually have many other dimensions that aren't easily quantified. In particular, even if they could be quantified, there are non-commensurate scales. So I was mentioning before, there can be a morality dimension, there can be a fashion dimension, would something be fashionable or not. There are tradition, there's this things about being consonant with what you feel your principles are, which may be distinct from morality. There's anticipated pleasure. There's these issues of value that you can do things for yourself, but when you love someone, it often then becomes of value to do things for them. So there are all of these different dimensions, and I think that we may make our important decisions. My conjecture is that we actually line up the alternatives like a beauty contest, and whichever one seems most pleasing, which is the definition of beauty, that's the one we pick. And it's not hedonistic, because it's not about trying to maximize the pleasure you're going to get. I mean, that might be a factor, but I don't think typically is. I think that, for example, if you're painting and you're trying to decide what the next stroke is, that you contemplate. I mean, I don't know how conscious this is, but in some sense or other, your brain is evaluating various alternative strokes that you might make, and you pick the one that seems right. So Wittgenstein talks about the word fitting, the one that seems most fit. Fitting in the sense of being appropriate, and that judgment, I think, is a beauty judgment. And it has all the qualities of integrating all of these different dimensions.
That would be interesting to how our power of choice is influenced by beauty.
Right. So there's an interesting natural experiment that if beauty is pleasure, then if you didn't have that pleasure, you shouldn't be able to experience beauty. And I'm claiming that without beauty you can't make decisions, because they're all based on beauty. Well, it turns out that there's a natural experiment, which is that the main, a very large effect of major clinical depression is anhedonia, inability to experience pleasure. It's a standard thing for people who are having that or a not very nice experience. And I've never been depressed. but I have friends that have been depressed, and I've certainly read about it. And it's a pretty standard thing that, indeed, they can't experience pleasure. And not only that, but they lose beauty. So there's a description of a patient talking to his therapist, saying, I'm holding a rose in my hand, and I know roses are supposed to be beautiful, but all I see is these soft petals that I know are going to rot. There's a description in Hamlet, who's grieving the loss of his father, about how he gets together with his buddies from college, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and he's saying that he knows that God made a wonderful earth, but all he sees is pestilent vapors. So people lose pleasure, they lose beauty along with the pleasure, because that's what beauty is made of. And then furthermore, they actually make bad decisions. They either find they can't make decisions or make bad decisions.